Evolution Security Podcast.
Hello everyone, this is Aaron Davis welcoming you to the Evolution Security Podcast. First off, we want to thank you so much for listening. We just really appreciate the support we've received over the last few years. This has been a blast. So we've got a great show for you. This will be the second time to have who is a huge personal and direct influence on the EvoSec crew, and he's my pistol coach, Mr. Mike Brown. Now, before we get into that interview with Mike, I'd like to mention our sponsors who we believe in, and we believe that they are the best in their business. First, I'd like to mention Origin. Now, it is really difficult to go through all the amazing products that they make, from supplements to the best jiu-jitsu gis in the world. Just an incredible company, all American made, from the soil to the loom and to the shipping department. Now, the other night I was rolling in my Axiom gi, just an incredible work of art. But, every now and then I get a little hot in that. So here pretty soon I'm going to go ahead and pick up their new The Path gi. The great thing about the Path gi is that it is actually a thinner material and it's going to be a little bit cooler. So I'll get that here in time for the summer rolling season. Again, just check out Origin at originmaine.com. Amazing company. And whatever you want to get from them at checkout, use EvoSec10, and that lets them know how many people purchase goods after listening to our show. We really appreciate that. Next, I'd like to mention Tenacor. We believe that they are the most innovative force-on-force tested holsters in the business. Simply brilliant mounting options to adjust for comfortable carry, and of course yet properly concealed and properly positioned for quick presentation if you need to. Just again, great holsters from great people. I would suggest that you go check out their Khartoum Lux 2. They have that for a lot of Glock and SIG models. Now, Jeff Mao, he has always designed features into his holsters that seem to be ahead of the game. For instance, like stock RDS cuts. You're not going to have that custom done, especially with just even lately, the boom of people using red dot sights. And the main issue, or the main feature of the Lux 2, is the fact that it fits a lot of weapon-mounted lights. It's basically a universal holster for all of the major WMLs. So check that holster out. Check out everything else that they have to offer. So when you check out, remember to use the discount code EVOSEC. That lets them know that you're hearing about their products on our show. And of course, you get 10% off with that discount code. All right, one last thing. Just want to give you a reminder to please do us a favor and go to iTunes, maybe even if you don't listen to iTunes, but go out there and give us a rating and give us some feedback. Give us a review. Let us know what we're doing well and what we need to improve on. We'd like to hear it all. And most of all, please share the Evolution Security Podcast with your friends and your family. Well, without any more delay, let's get into this interview with Mike Brown.
We would like to welcome to the show our humble guest, Mr. Mike Brown. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
Man, it's good to have you back. For those of you that have been listening for a while, obviously he was on episode 5, and we've got him back again. And it's been a while. So why don't you just take a couple minutes and give us a little, maybe not as in depth as last time, but a short background of where you come from and what you do now.
Sure. Well, I'm a retired police officer. I did 22 years with the Tulsa Police Department. Worked a variety of assignments while I was there. And currently, I teach a criminal justice program at Tulsa Technology Center. My students are juniors and seniors in high school who aspire to work in law enforcement. And other than that, I'm a dad and jiu-jitsu practitioner and avid shooter. So just enjoying this aspect of my life.
Nice. No, and it's good to hear that there's somewhere where kids still get to do that in their formative, formal training years, because that's a difficult road, and for people that have interest in it, they need every edge they can get nowadays.
Yeah, it's a more than anything else, I think it simply prepares them for the type of organization that law enforcement agencies are. And that's quite frequently, for those who maybe didn't serve in the military or something like that. A lot of times that's a culture shock for people. I know it was for me. I went straight from college to working in law enforcement, and for a kid who comes from working in retail or fast food, next thing you know, they're going into working at a law enforcement agency. It's a huge transition. And for these kids, they're very used to that formality, the chain of command, the manner in which we speak, the lingo, the jargon, all that sort of stuff that is common in law enforcement. They've had 2 years of that, as opposed to coming in and getting dumped in the deep end of the pool.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely can be, like you say, the culture shock. Well, more on jiu-jitsu, really, we're going to try and focus some of this show on there. Obviously, we're going to talk about a variety of things you do, but how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu?
My very first time that I experienced jiu-jitsu was 1993. I went to a seminar at the New York Athletic Club when I was in college. At that time, the Gracie family all taught together, or the side that was in the United States, all taught together, and I went to a seminar there. After that, after that experience, one summer I was working in doing an internship in New York, and I would train at Henzo Gracie School as often as I could. I didn't get to do it as regularly as I would have wanted to. So I had basically a summer of jiu-jitsu. And then at that point, I graduated from college, moved to Oklahoma, and there was no jiu-jitsu here. So I spent a lot of years not training. And then at about 2001, shortly after 9/11, I happened to meet a pilot who was wanting to shoot, was wanting to learn to shoot. And he also happened to be a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Now, at that time in Oklahoma in the early 2000s, if you were a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, you were like a ninja. There was nobody around who could deal with what you could do. Your knowledge base was so far ahead of everybody else's. And so it was really unique to find this guy. And so we traded jiu-jitsu for shooting. At that time, my good friend Brandon Bennett kind of facilitated that relationship with him. And he and I would train with this guy, 3-4 times a week. And that was really where my start of jiu-jitsu began. After that, this guy, Todd Winsloff was his name, He had got transferred. The airline that he worked for wanted him to work in Virginia. So he was gone and I was back, left without anybody. But I got a reasonable base to start with. And we gathered a few people who wanted to train and, started to work together a little bit more. And that was when I shortly after that, developed a relationship with Cecil Birch. And Cecil is the guy who I look at and I consider to be the person who taught me jiu-jitsu. I understood a little bit about jiu-jitsu and I'd wrestled. So I had some idea of, what grappling was about. But Cecil is the guy who really taught me jiu-jitsu. And then I began training with Cecil about 2005. And that was where I really developed the understanding and passion for it that I try to carry today.
Nice. Well, that's pushing almost 30 years, by the way. Good for you, man. It's cool to see. It's encouraging for me, new to the practice, to see people who have been at it that long and want to continue to learn more and continue to do it. So you inspire me, having done it that long, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I just never grow tired of it. I mean, it's the thing about jiu-jitsu, as opposed to a lot of other activities, is it's just so infinitely deep. There is just no point at which you can look at it and say, okay, I think I understand this. A lot of times when you'll hear from people who get their black belt that really you're just starting. And that's really true. At black belt, I kind of began to realize how little I knew, despite the fact that, I'd met with some success and had stayed with it long enough to be promoted to black belt. You really just start, it's there that your eyes really start to open to how little you know.
Well, Mike, one of the things that I always like to do, we brag on you all the time outside of your presence, but I always like to brag on you a little bit, and you're a humble guy, but I want the audience to understand, I believe you're one of the most accomplished persons or people that I know. Number one, I mean, just starting back with your wrestling career back in college at Cornell, you were a Division I wrestler. You become a police officer. You and I meet the first time, and I always tell this story pretty often. The first time I met you, we were in grappling class, and I could not touch you. I'm like, what in the world is this guy doing? And you told me about your wrestling background, and of course, compared to what I know now, and I'm still intermediate myself, but I knew nothing back then. But still, yet, I was just amazed at your understanding of position, and I think that's what you brought to the table more than anything else at Gibson's. Would you just understood position? And we've talked on this before about back then we were pretty much doing a series of locks, and then we would roll.
Right.
But furthermore, I also want the audience to know that you're the person that, I'll just use your term, you're the person that taught me pistol, becoming a national champion in IDPA, and you decide then, well, I'm gonna take more of my time and put into jiu-jitsu, and I'd like the audience to also know that you're a multi-time world champion in jiu-jitsu. And
well, just to make sure that we don't totally just. I'm a master's level at brown belt was where I won 2 world titles. It wasn't. I am not a I am not a Bernardo Faria or someone like that. I'm a reasonably accomplished middle-aged practitioner.
Absolutely.
More than anything
and
else.
I was certainly going to allow you to articulate that. I apologize it came out that way.
No,
but absolutely, the primary thing I'm trying to get across is that when you set your mind to something, you don't stop until you meet or reach the higher levels. So I kind of want to talk about competition. You know, I've competed in jiu-jitsu. I'm not nearly as much as you, and it's been many years since I've competed in jiu-jitsu. Of course, I still shoot competition and pistol, but I wanted you to kind of frame either the importance of competition and maybe a branch off of that if you feel like, because we're trying to kind of frame this show as educating people on what can make them more successful. So let me ask it this way. Do you think that everybody should compete if they can?
Well, I think that it's dependent on the person. Now, I think that for me personally, if I don't have competition, there's something missing in my life. You know, it's probably going to be surprising to hear, but I don't like to compete. I find competition terrifying most of the time. Most of the time, it's my anxiety gets to me competing. But that what competition has done is taught me to control that easily. Competition has created given me a platform to practice the reduction of that anxiety, to not have to be scared of what's going on. And that's true for me. I mean, in shooting and jiu-jitsu and just about any place, but in jiu-jitsu probably even more so because you're so much on display when you compete. You know, it's if you in shooting, if you're you do badly, you can kind of I'll just come do the next one well. But in jiu-jitsu, when you lose, it's very personal. You feel awful that another person basically could have just killed you if they had chosen to. If they had not obeyed the rules of what had gone on. So it is a challenging thing. Now, what I can say for everybody is that there is nobody for whom competition will not improve them in some fashion. I don't like to tell everybody that they should compete, but what I do want to say is that if you are frightened of something, you should confront it, and that's the way I look at competition.
Yeah, I like that response, Mike, and
Excellent.
Even though we're not trying to go into the weapons-based environment specifically in this show, we always preach, and again, these are things that started in my mentorship under you, is the value of pressure and facing fears and anxieties, like you stated, helps us in the ultimate test, which is defense of our lives, and I think that's where a lot of this can tie in. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's where the real value is that, because I think we talked about this on the last podcast, is that your subconscious mind, where all your skills are, no matter what the topic is, in your subconscious mind, it does not understand the difference between fantasy and reality. So, to your subconscious mind, which is, like I said, where all your skills are, a jiu-jitsu match or a shooting match may as well be a fight to the death. As far as your ability to access your skills goes. Now, our conscious mind recognizes, I'm not going to die here. I'm not going to, this is just a shooting match, or this is just a jiu-jitsu match. I can always tap, that sort of thing. But when it comes to actually accessing your skills, your subconscious doesn't understand the difference between this competition and a fight to the death.
Yeah, that's excellent, and that's precisely what I like our listeners to hear, and how this ties in, because that's ultimately what our show is about. and also what we try to do in our infant business. So excellent answer, Mike. I'd like to move a little bit more into the state of competition right now.
Sure.
Frankly, man, I love watching submission only, watching, EBI fight to win, who's number one, all of that. I think it's outstanding. It's very exciting. There is some thoughts I've had, and again, I'm intermediate, so I'd like your opinion on this. I'll never stop liking submission only, but I do feel like there's an aspect of it that a lot of these super successful guys, Gordon Ryan being one of them, Gary Tonin, all these guys that are really good at submission only, I do see that there are times where they might give up advantageous positions that are so important for the real application of jiu-jitsu on the street. Do you feel like there is kind of that niche in there that can be a little detriment to those of us that focus on jiu-jitsu for self-defense? I really like your honest opinion.
Sure. Absolutely. I don't think so, personally. I think that I understand exactly what you're referring to. One of the aspects of points-based jiu-jitsu is that you never, ever, ever give up a position because the position costs you points. And there's an artificiality to that as well,
Sure.
too, because you won't do things that will give up position. But the reality is that you might need to do that in order to accomplish a specific tactical goal. When we talk about it in submission only, and let me first say, I absolutely agree with you that I think that it is it's the way that jiu-jitsu becomes accessible to people, because it's so much more entertaining to watch that way. Watching a points-based jiu-jitsu match, will put me to sleep as fast as anybody, and I love this stuff.
That's good to know, Mike.
So, I mean, it's not, I get that rationale. And what I do appreciate about the issue that you're talking about, the idea that, sometimes they're willing to give up positions in order to make other things occur. Where I think that's an important distinction is that that's exactly how we should all train. And when I say that, the goal of training isn't to win. The goal of training is to learn. And I think that far too often when we train, we gauge our success based entirely around whether we succeeded in whatever it is we were looking to do, whether that be to submit somebody or to escape a position or something else. But really, the important aspect of that isn't so much that you succeed, but that you understand. Because if you succeed, but you don't understand, then you're kind of like a monkey who accidentally types a word on a typewriter. It doesn't matter because you can't replicate it. Now, if you don't have the level of success that you want to achieve, but you understand, then you've achieved something far more important than a single individual movement that you executed correctly or a submission that you got. Because now you can replicate it. And the goal in learning jiu-jitsu isn't that you beat any individual partner or win any particular role. It's that you understand that you can be present enough to recognize what's happening. And if you recognize what's happening, then you're cooking with gas. Then you're really understanding what it is that you need to accomplish and what you can continue to do. If you aren't present and you can't understand how something happened, it just isn't that valuable to you, because then it's an accident.
Well said, Mike. I mean, I totally expect that type of answer from you. And maybe I'll even frame it this way from my lesser experience understanding. Also, if all I'm concerned about is keeping somebody from passing my guard or me losing top position or whatever submission I think I'm going to try to execute that one night, then I am giving up so many opportunities to learn. Is kind of what I feel like you're saying, right?
That's certainly part of it. The big deal is that is figuring out what success really is. Is success getting a sweep, or success understanding why the sweep works? And in my opinion, understanding why the sweep works is far more important than getting the sweep.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And the earlier someone comes to grips with that, the faster their progress in jiu-jitsu, occurs. And it's one of the reasons that big, strong people frequently learn at a slower pace and progress at a slower pace than intelligent people, because there are people who are intelligent and thoughtful. If they get that, they tend to get that idea a lot faster than big, strong, athletic people. Now, there's nothing wrong with being big and strong and athletic, but you don't want to use that as the basis for your development. You want to understand what makes a technique work.
One little follow up, just as a side note, and then I'll pass this to Aaron. Did you happen to see that shakeup with Gordon Ryan and Andre Galvin, where they got into a shouting match and Gordon Ryan slapped him twice? Did you see that?
I did see it. Yes,
man. I'm a fan of both of those guys. They're amazing athletes, and that won't change the way I think about either one of them. But I'm like, man, that's come to quite an escalation. I can't believe Andre Galvin didn't do more, frankly. But I mean, my understanding is that I think Gordon Ryan wants to close out Andre Galvin's progression, or I mean, obviously he's at ADCC. Andre Galvin is the top position, the super fight winner and owner for several. What is it? The last two ADCCs. I think it's at least it may be three. Yeah, I think it is. I think it may be three. I feel bad that I don't know that, but or not sure. But I think Gordon Ryan wants that title, and I've heard that Andre Galvin may be kind of trying to go to slowly retire, and that may not be happening. So I think that may have something to do with it. But I don't know. What have you heard on that?
Yeah, I don't know either of them well enough to to speculate as to what their mindset on things are. That said, what I can say is I've met both of them, and I have observed both of them kind of firsthand. And to be honest, it does not surprise me that it eventually all came to that. You have two extremely competitive personalities, both with individual sets of goals that the other one impedes in some way, and I think that one of the downsides to kind of the competitive jiu-jitsu world is that we sometimes forget what it's really all about. And the reality is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu got big by people agreeing to fight each other. It's not a peacefully developed art. I know that the groups like Gracie Magazine and such like that really kind of emphasize the idea of jiu-jitsu being a gentle art. And it's my opinion, and it's my opinion only. I'm certainly not a not a scholar in this area, but I think that's that gentle art is really a bad translation of what jiu-jitsu is, because anybody who's trained with people like Andre Galvao will tell you that their jiu-jitsu isn't gentle at all. Really, I think what the better way to look at that is that jiu-jitsu is efficient. It's more the art of efficiency rather than the art of gentleness. And I think that that's just kind of a poor translation that we've probably accepted over the years. Because the reality is there's nothing gentle about strangling people unconscious or breaking their limbs.
Not at all.
But it is, if you've read Jigoro Kano's book, Mind Over Muscle, his position does not appear to be that jiu-jitsu is intended, or jitsu or judo, is intended to be gentle, but it is intended to be, that you do not require incredible amounts of strength or athleticism in order to perform it well. So really, I think efficiency is a better translation than gentle. And when you look at it from that frame, it's a little bit easier to see how these sort of things can happen in a sport like this. One of the other things I've noticed is that there's depending on, having been to a couple of world championships and seen the interactions between different people and such, I think that there's a little bit of bravado that people are willing to exert when they know they're not going to get punched.
Oh yeah.
And I think that I see that a lot in jiu-jitsu tournaments, and I tend to try to conduct myself in a way that no one's ever going to want to fight with. I have my jiu-jitsu in case that that plan fails, but I've noticed that not everybody necessarily agrees with that philosophy. I think there are a lot of people at jiu-jitsu tournaments who act in a manner that they probably wouldn't if they thought they'd get hit for doing it.
One of the things that I've been dealing with here in North Carolina is settling on the gym that I want to train at. I've been training at two different gyms in Fayetteville, which I'm not going to name either one of them right now because it's likely I'm not going to train at either one of them anymore. However, one of the gym that I'm starting at tomorrow, I would have started yesterday, but it was my wife's birthday, is that it's an affiliate of one of those gyms. I'll just state Team Rock. And the one thing that always concerns me sometimes, though, in some of these gyms, especially that I'm older, is what happens in gyms that are mixed MMA and jiu-jitsu gyms, if that makes sense. And I think kind of what you're saying is there's, especially with some of the younger kids, that, I mean, they see me, I guess I still look young, and I also have capabilities as well, but I don't heal as well. So I got to be real careful about that bravado coming in with those young kids these days, honestly. So, which I think MMA and some of this elevated promotion and ego that comes along with some of these high level competitors, unfortunately. But I don't want to poo poo on that. I think there's so much value. I just think that particular incident kind of highlighted where some of this can go. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah. And, to be honest, I mean, I think it's one of those things I kind of look at that situation and say, if you feel comfortable putting your hands on someone, you've got to expect that they're probably going to retaliate.
Yeah.
And it's what it looked like what happened from what I could see.
Well, let me ask this question. I wasn't going to ask this because I really don't care one way or the other. But would you want to venture to place a winner out of those two?
In terms of a grappling match in the ADCC format?
Yeah, ADCC format. Yeah.
That's a tough one. If I was going to bet on one of those two to win, I'm going to bet on Gordon Ryan.
Yeah.
I just think that he's, between the combination of age and current confidence level and such, I just don't see anybody that's his equal at this point.
There isn't right now. There's nobody better in the world. I mean, he's proven that in submission only and ADCC. But yeah, okay, I agree with you.
And despite the fact that people know he's that good, honestly, I don't know that he gets enough credit for what he's done.
Yeah, I agree with you there too.
Because I think that he's, I think a lot of people, they read his brashness on social media. They hear his interviews, and they kind of tag him, as a cocky, I don't know if we want to call it a Conor McGregor type. But the reality is that Gordon Ryan is the hardest working person in jiu-jitsu. He is somebody who puts so much work into what he's done. And he's done it in a short period of time just because he put the hours in a way that no one had done before this.
Well, heck, he was a purple belt at EBI, was he not?
I don't think so. I don't think he was a purple at that point.
Okay.
But he was, he progressed so quickly to such a high level, not because of some particular gift, but because he outworked everybody. Yeah. He put in hours that most people or I shouldn't say most people, 99.99% of people who actually step onto a mat aren't willing to put in.
Well, hey, Mike, Aaron here. I wanted to kind of talk about something that you said earlier about the vastness of jiu-jitsu. And,
absolutely.
I can really relate to that as I've played guitar for the past 32 years. And there really is a point where you maybe even are professional like I have been and played with some of my favorite musicians, etc. But there is a point where you realize there's so much that you do not know and that you will probably never know that it makes you humble.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I think that honestly, that's what keeps me interested, to be honest. It is, I can see where for a very beginning person that could be frustrating. But once you come to grips with the idea that it's so deep that you are just, you could go on this trail forever. It really makes it it makes it easier for me.
Interesting.
It makes it more exciting for me. It makes it so that it's just so much less likely that I'll get bored with it.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted to say this, and I don't want to discourage any listeners out there because we certainly espouse getting into jiu-jitsu and grappling arts if one is able. But I can say this, that on all, out of all the things that I've done in my life and all the things that I've been fairly successful in, jiu-jitsu is still the most difficult endeavor that I've tried. And to be honest, sometimes I'm like you said, I can get frustrated. But again, I'm glad I'm in it, and I will keep working at it because I do learn so much. And specifically, I'm real proud of my wife. She hit it hard, and man, she goes all the time, and she's of course in advanced classes, and right after she got done with the intermediate classes like I am in, she said, Aaron, I was just overwhelmed, and I am still overwhelmed every time I go. So like I said, I don't want to discourage people, but it is a endeavor that takes a lot of brain power.
It does. The something to consider, when we feel like that, is that we shouldn't be, I don't know if the term, we shouldn't be frustrated by that feeling, because what I can tell you is that I still get that feeling. I mean, that's never going to go away. But the difference is I'm comfortable with that feeling now. It's not alien to me anymore. We'll never be able to eliminate struggle from our lives. It just doesn't happen. But when we become comfortable struggling, then everything else is much easier.
And that's excellent, and also encouraging. Wow, that you still feel that way sometimes. Well,
yeah, I mean, I still get extraordinarily frustrated.
Wow.
In what I do, because it's that's just kind of the nature of things. But the difference is that I don't know, when we get frustrated, frequently we develop a high level of anxiety over that level of frustration. And the gig is to, avoid feeling that anxiety, because you'll always have the frustration.
Don't let it get into anxiety, is what you're saying, or try and reduce that.
Right. Exactly. Is it not allowing that frustration or that inability to do something to be anxiety, but rather almost to create a curiosity. Why is this not working? And seeking that answer. And if if your path is constantly to look for answers, look for truth, then it's much, much easier to handle the frustration, because you're now no longer worried about your frustration. Your frustration is simply a guide for you to find truth.
Excellent. Well, let me ask you this, Mike. So for people like me and those in the audience that are still new practitioners in jiu-jitsu, besides what they're learning in class from their instructors, say like in an open mat format, what would you encourage, or what do you believe newcomers should be working on when they're not just going to class?
Now, if you're talking about specific tactics, movements, and things, that's very individual.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I would really say you need to learn this.
Yeah, and I don't think overall what you think could help.
The thing that I think that helps people, I kind of talked about this a little earlier. That really, if you want to escalate your learning and skill level in jiu-jitsu, is you've got to learn to be present. Now, when I say present, what I mean is you're not concerned about the result. You're not concerned about who's watching you. You're not concerned about whether your instructor is impressed. You're not concerned about any of the things that most of the time we concern ourselves with. But that your only focus is what's happening right now and what should I do to move along the path that I need to move along towards. And it's one of the reasons that I find training with a clock kind of frustrating, because when we start training with a clock, we put artificial limitations on ourselves. We say if there's 5 minutes, I've got 5 minutes to escape, or I've got 5 minutes to submit somebody, or I've got 5 minutes to get the mount, or whatever it is your goal is. And I don't really care for that. And I've learned to kind of mitigate the idea of dealing with a clock by simply not worrying about whether I actually get what I'm trying to get. What I'm looking for is whether I understand why I'm succeeding or failing. And that if a new practitioner can get that in their head, their progress will escalate at a level far greater than they would have previously. We just can't collect a basket of techniques and then expect that we're going to be able to apply them. We really need to focus on the why. Why something works, why something fails. And the only way to really understand that yourself is to be present. Because even if your coach is watching you the whole time, your coach sees you and sees something failing, there are a limited number of things a coach can tell you to do. And sometimes a coach can, if you're very, very early in the process, a coach can tell you, okay, you've got to frame with your left hand. Okay, you've got to be moving your bottom leg as opposed to trying to push your top leg through. There are things that a coach can tell you physically, but that's just not as useful once you start to have a little bit of understanding of the techniques. Because really, the best thing that you can do is learn to coach yourself. And the way that you learn to coach yourself is by being present, by recognizing what's going on. And if you will free yourself from concern of success or failure, beating a certain person, getting beaten by a certain person, seeing who's watching, all that stuff, then you are much more likely to realize what's happening at that moment. And once you realize what's happening, it makes it much, much easier to execute it on demand.
So, Mike, I'm new not only to jiu-jitsu, but I'm newly back in the gym. So we had a little rougher here in some of the Western states.
Mm-hmm.
My gym was closed for almost an entire year. I had about 9 months, a little over 9 months of training in, had one stripe, really felt like things were clicking, and then got the go home, don't come back,
So the rug pulled out from under you. Yeah.
Exactly. Literally it was, I understand they could only do what they could do, but I have landed another gym because the hours and, working times and working parameters are better for me. Currently we're still under some constraints here, but I've only been back a couple of weeks. And one thing that's interesting is, I don't remember a lot of submission moves. I'm working on, we drill and I'm learning. The drills are familiar, but when you're talking about being comfortable with the pressure and being comfortable having someone, one with their hands on you and your hands on them, that did not go away. So I've been, really good at learning to be inside control, not myself, being inside control, and just being comfortable being constrained, and then waiting. And like you're talking about, when the move starts to happen, that's my opportunity. Because if I'm in a really good controlled position where I am positively controlled, until he moves, I'm just wasting my breath trying to force myself out. And that's something that I got to remember, is to not expend the strength when there's no purpose in expending it.
Right. I think that's, what I was talking about a little earlier when I was talking about the idea of training with a clock. One of the frustrations that many, both new and experienced people sometimes get is that when that clock is running, there becomes this idea that if you don't get it done before the buzzer goes off, that you failed. And would really encourage people to not think that way. That if, like you say, if you're being held in side control, for a protracted period of time, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to escape until that person moves. And some people have the idea that if they end the round in the better position, that they've quote unquote won. And the reality is that, what exactly did you win? They're not giving out any medals tonight. There's no there's no awards for you being the last guy on top in side control. And the reality is what that person did was, they impeded their own progress by looking at something that didn't matter. And now, if you are specifically holding side control because you need to learn how to hold side control, that's a whole different matter. If you have someone who doesn't know how to hold it, or has become exhausted and they feel like, okay, this is a place where I can catch my breath. Those are different things. But I think a significant number of people who do jiu-jitsu do so with the goal that if I can beat this person, I'll feel better about myself. And I think that that's really a really limiting way to look at jiu-jitsu. That if you gauge your success and failure based upon how you do against one individual in the gym, or even a group of individuals in the gym, I think you're really missing the boat. No, I say you, I'm not talking about you specifically. I just mean the royal you. And I think that what you're describing right there, the idea that you have developed some comfort of being on bottom and then recognizing that you can't do anything until that person moves, is a big step. That's an important piece of the recognition process, particularly at white belt. It took me much longer than that to recognize that.
Yeah, I definitely, we do 5-minute rounds like you were talking about. And I agree with what you're talking about there, not focusing on the time, but where I'm at currently, if I can limit them to one submission or no submissions in that round, I feel like I've won. And especially when I remember to keep my elbows tight, my hands high, maybe a blade in their throat when they start to close in, those are the things that, staying, like you're talking about, staying present, remembering to not just survive, but actually have an offense when they're attempting to make a finish or move into a position of more control. Because even if they have top or mount, I have lots of tools in the toolbox to stop them from taking that to the next level. And I just need to stay in the moment in order to be able to do that.
And what I would encourage you to think about as you're doing that is that don't constrain yourself by the idea that if you get submitted 3 times, that doesn't mean that particular role was unsuccessful.
No.
If you get submitted or don't get submitted is almost kind of irrelevant. What's most important is that you understand how each of those things occurred. Like you're describing there a second ago about, keeping your elbows in. That's where the learning occurs.
Yeah.
Is recognizing that my elbows being close is beneficial because it allows me to get on my side easier. And it eliminates one particular half of his common attacks. There being from side control, the primary attacks are attacking the arms or attacking the neck. And keeping your elbows in close at least, limits the person's ability to attack your arms. But then what happens is if a person who understands kind of the progression of how the attacks work, they recognize that, well, his elbows are in, so I can't attack his arms. So now I'm going to start attacking his neck. And then that's where kind of the difficulty usually comes for most white belts. Is they don't recognize that there is a way to do both of those things at the same time. Now, when I say that, that's not just a white belt problem. That's a black belt problem too. The difference is that the space for error is just so much smaller at black belt than it is at white belt. At white belt, you make bigger errors. You make the same errors at black belt that you make at white belt. They're just much smaller.
Right. No, and I have definitely noticed, like you're talking about, knowing the attacks that are common, especially with people that are learning maybe a smaller set of skills than someone who's more advanced. But I've never had someone have a hold on my wrist and lift my elbow up if my elbow's against my sternum or my side. You know, that only happens when my elbow is separated from my body.
Yeah, simple physiology is just if your elbows are close, you're able to access the bigger muscles of your body.
Yeah.
If your elbows are away from your body, then the muscles that control them are the smaller, weaker ones, the labrum, the rotator cuff, things like that.
Yeah. Nice. Good stuff, man. And this is the exact content we're after. What did you have something there, Eric?
Yeah, sure did. And I agree with you, Brian. Again, Mike, that's why I wanted this next episode with you to be about jiu-jitsu, because the content you're laying down is exactly what we were looking for. And what I kind of felt we intended was for our audience to be able to hear some of the higher level thoughts and wisdom that you provide in this, and you're delivering for sure.
Oh yeah.
So Mike, I kind of want to keep this moving in a direction of education to help people. Frankly, I've been a Ronin this last year as well. I was deployed to Iraq half of the year, and then when I came back, the gym was shut down. Brian and I used to train at the same gym together. Jiu-Jitsu Dynamics, always shout out to those guys. So I ended up using a lot of video this year. I've given a lot of money to BJJ Fanatics.
Right. Same.
So as far as the use of video for extracurricular learning, the efficacy in your mind of video?
I think that it's again very dependent on the person and their learning style. My learning style is very kinesthetic. So the amount of benefit that I get from video is much less than somebody who is a very strong visual learner. I can watch a video and I don't necessarily understand the subtleties or what makes it work. Just because of how I learn. Whereas I've got another black belt who's operates an affiliate school of ours that I am constantly jealous of, because he's able to look at something and then replicate it. I can't necessarily do that. That said, what I can do is I can use video to guide me towards new ideas. And that's primarily what I'm doing in terms of when I watch video, is I'm looking for things I really don't know anything about, things where I'm completely missing the boat. And fortunately, there's plenty of that. There's plenty of areas where where I don't understand something extremely well, and where video tends to be most useful for me is exposing the things that I don't know and telling me what I do need to start developing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Mike. And at your level, being a black belt, that seems like where video, I could understand how that would work best for you in that fashion. Frankly, myself, I'm doing my best to try to get my purple belt this year. That's not the ultimate goal, but I mean that's ultimately what I'm trying to focus on this year.
Yeah, and don't misunderstand when I say that, though. It's not because of my level, because there are plenty of people at the blue and purple belt levels who do a lot of things better than I do. It's really not a matter for me when I talk about that idea of exposing what I don't know. It's that we all have a tendency to do the things that we're good at. And what I find video to be most useful for is pointing out the things that I don't do well. So it really makes me see that there is a greater depth of out there that I'm just not exposed to all the time. One of the downsides of being a black belt is that everybody expects you to have all the answers. And the reality is that, there's a significant amount of time that we don't. Like if someone said, here, I need you to show me, how to, the intricacy of this ashigarami position. I have to confess that I'm just not the right guy to ask. I'm not that good at that. It's never been it had never been a priority to me.
Well, and it's likely only becoming a question from a lot of folks that are seeing all the leg attacks and whatnot, the ashi being used so much more. Yeah.
It's just become more popular now. But but leg attacks have been going on for a long time. But it wasn't until people, particularly that John Danaher group, systematized the idea that it became, as accessible to other people, when they started being able to break down what they were doing. And that's an area that I just, because of, we're still, all of us here that are talking right now are hobbyist, jiu-jitsu athletes. We have other jobs, we have other interests, we have families, we have lots of things that impede our ability to spend all our time on jiu-jitsu. Not that we would even want to, if that were the case. Right. But for these guys, jiu-jitsu is everything. And because of that, they're able to explore to a depth that you and I probably won't reach. The nice thing is that video allows you and I to access that sort of information without necessarily having to have explored, the same hours that someone like a Gordon Ryan or a Gary Tonin or someone else has. So it really points out to me what I don't know.
Yeah, I like that answer a lot, Mike. And for clarity, I totally understood where you were going. Kind of my point might have been that video for me, it has some of the same attributes that you stated, because I will see stuff in videos like, man, for instance, the top lock, although Professor Will definitely had us working top lock for gaining arm bar and triangle positions, but he is very cyclical in his instruction. And being that I'm on the road all the time, it just happened that I missed a lot of that focus on the top lock position. But when I got some of my Danaher videos where that was a big focus, and also full disclosure, at least during some of the hiatus of the gym, one of our brown belts there, shout out to Ryan, he seeked me out for the weapons-based stuff. And he and I trained a lot over the last few months, and he was really good at the top lock stuff, really good with leg lock stuff. So those are some things that I really benefited from with him. But I guess that's the main point. It's like the top lock was a big thing when I got those videos. Like, man, I've been doing arm bars from guard and triangles from the guard for so many years. Why did I not learn this position? So the video was definitely a big part of that.
Yeah, I encounter that all the time where I say, I really should have learned this at blue belt.
Yeah.
And there's, like I said, there's a lot of times. I mean, I remember. I'm sure everybody here that's done jiu-jitsu for a while is familiar with the scissor sweep.
Yes.
Everybody, knows it, probably knows how to do it, that sort of thing. But once you've progressed past the first couple weeks of white belt, all of a sudden you realize, man, this isn't working the way they showed it.
Yeah.
And at the later stages of brown belt, I finally figured out, wait, I think I understand what makes this work. And it's interesting that a technique, which is probably the first sweep that almost everybody learns, I really wasn't applying well until I got to brown belt. And now it's a go-to technique for me now, both in gi and no. Once you understand what it is that makes this technique work, and even more for kind of to kind of show that there is even a further depth to that. Every year when my coach's coach, Master Jean Jacq Machado, comes to our school, everybody asks, "Can you show us how to do the scissor sweep? What makes it work?" And he shows us every year. And every year, no one ever understands. Because there's just something that you learn when you've been a black belt for 20 years. And I kind of scratched the surface on that at brown belt, realizing that, wait, this technique that I learned the first week that I did jiu-jitsu and hasn't worked for me for the subsequent 15, 20 years, all of a sudden started working for me.
Well, Mike, I would like to enumerate a few of the videos that are kind of my favorite currently, or at least in the last year. And I would ask you if you could do the same. If you wanna name some, I'll tell you that I'll just generally state that the Danaher videos, I haven't found any better. His, like you said, the systematic way that he teaches, his back attack videos have done wonders for my back game and my chokes from the rear, and just understanding, starting to learn the leg lock game a little bit from those videos, and again, the basics of his escapes and his guard passing videos. I mean, I have learned so much through just those videos, and then applying them in open mat. I mean, they're some of the best investments I've made. Do you like those videos? And also, do you have some specific ones that you would recommend, or that, well, more specifically, Mike, I'd like to know what you are into right now, video wise.
Right now, the videos that I personally prefer, and they have the same genesis, is I tend to prefer Gordon Ryan's videos over John Danaher's videos. Not because there's anything technically different in the videos, but that it's a matter of personal preference and presentation. I sometimes find John Danaher's tone to be very difficult for me because I'm just not an audio or visual learner. I'm a kinesthetic learner. My patience level is pretty low.
You do have to have a lot of patience for the Danaher. He does drag out a lot of it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I tend to, I prefer Gordon Ryan's videos just because I kind of prefer his presentation. He is presenting, similar material. Although he doesn't do he hasn't done any gi videos yet, which would be the primary difference I'd see. But I think that his are the ones that right now I'm trying to absorb. And I'll be honest, his videos contain so much material that I'm not sure. Whenever I see BJJ fanatics saying, "Well, you bought this one, you should buy this one next." I always think to myself, "Yeah, okay, I get that and I agree." Except that, man, I'm still absorbing the first chapter of this.
And I do have some of the Gordon Ryan. I think I've got the Attacking Guard series. I've got one other.
I think that one is a game changer for me. Because I passed very, very differently than I'm learning on that video, and his system is obviously much more comprehensive than mine.
Well, just the floating methods that he shows in there has changed my passing for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, very cool. That's what I like to hear. And now I'm like, I'm gonna have to go back and watch those videos again, because I have spent a lot of time on my Danaher videos.
So those are the ones I'm currently trying to absorb. I don't know that I can necessarily tell someone that that's what you should go to first, because it may be, someone like him would be a better person to answer that question as to whether his videos are probably the ones to start with, or because he tends to address things from a problem-based format. He usually starts his videos by saying, well, when somebody does this, it's usually because this is what they're trying to do. And I can see where that might be challenging for a brand new person. That said, they're perfect for somebody who has some fundamental understanding. What videos I think are best for a pure beginner? The ones that I like the best in that regard are the videos from Saulo Ribeiro.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I think those were the ones that, when I was really trying to learn this and didn't understand what should be some really simple concepts, those were the videos that helped me the most. Was his series.
Yeah, Saulo Ribeiro is outstanding at getting the basics across. Yeah, I have some of those. Again, this is why it's a great conversation. It's like, yeah, I need to go back to some of those too, for sure.
Yeah, I think those are the ones that, in my opinion, if I were probably to say to someone who hasn't done jiu-jitsu before, or is just learning and needs a good basic primer, I would say that those are the ones that I found most useful. That said, again, I learned I viewed those videos at a time when some of these other videos weren't out. So I don't know that I can necessarily say that you wouldn't be better off learning, say, like the John Danaher videos or the Gordon Ryan videos first. But I can say that I did probably, at that level of my development, I did take the most from Saulo Ribeiro's videos.
Nice. Well, and I'll just kind of mention these. I haven't been watching them for a while. I watched them more when I was in Iraq because I had a little more downtime. Of course, I worked more hours, but is the Gary Tonin escape videos. Those are really good. They're a little bit. Sometimes I feel like they're a little bit haphazard, but man, there's some really good escapes on there.
I've not seen any of his videos yet, because I tend to, if I can't watch a video, and I try not. I fail myself on occasion in doing this. I really try to not buy a new set until I've really feel comfortable that I've gotten the material out of the first one I watched.
And Mike, that's my problem is when I was deployed, I was buying them like crazy. So I'm with you.
It makes so much more sense there because, like you said, you had so much more downtime, and your ability to, to look at those and, absorb what's on there. If you have more time on your hands, you're certainly able to. Right now, I tend to look at a couple of concepts, and I have a partner now who's willing to, who kind of understands and appreciates my my desire to drill technique, which is because I think that's one of the areas that a lot of other sports have the advantage on jiu-jitsu, is that I think that the typical format in jiu-jitsu is, okay, we learn this move, everybody do it 4 or 5 times, or if you're lucky, you get to do it for 2-3 minutes, and then the other person does it for 2 or 3 minutes. That's just not sufficient to really learn and understand a technique. And in order to be able to really, if you look at most other combat sports, none of them go and say, okay, you do this technique 4 or 5 times, you do it 4 or 5 times. Okay, now let's train. Let's roll, or let's fight. Whatever it is. No one would do that. If you look at Thai boxing as an example, they spend hours working the pads in a given session before anybody considers sparring. In judo, they do enormous numbers of repetitions before they actually do any randori. In wrestling, the vast majority of the time is spent drilling rather than actually sparring. Now I think wrestling probably has the most advanced system in terms of how we drill effectively in order to be able to apply it to our actual sparring. But all of those systems require that you do it a lot more than just the typical number of times we do in a jiu-jitsu class.
Excellent response. And I have seen that, Mike, as I've gone through serious, and I don't know if we've spoke since the last time. I think we did, about my major back injury. And I think I even said over the air, it's like, my plan is to go to Master Worlds, and I had all this aspirations of competing again. Well, I kept re-injuring myself. And so I've kind of come to the conclusion, I'm not saying I won't still compete, but you hit it on the head. When I find partners that, not everything's rolling, not everything's sparring. And I think when I find partners that are willing to, hey, I want to work this Danaher technique. I want to work, whatever it is that I've been studying for the week. And when I find those training partners, it's golden, because not everything is sparring, although we have to do it. And I love it myself. Sometimes my brain is not ready to focus on technique. I kind of want to get my spar on, but as hard as it is to deal with getting a little bit older, I'm getting so much more when I find somebody that I can drill with, and then end in the evening with, a couple of rounds is perfectly fine with me.
Right. And I think that there's some sort of, kind of mistaken belief that when you get to a certain belt that you don't do that anymore. And that's just untrue. I remember reading a book on the Oklahoma State wrestling program, and John Smith went into depth about training and such, and he insisted that drilling is the majority of what we need to do in order to increase our technical development. That if you're not drilling, then odds are you're not learning. And you're certainly not learning at the pace you could. Not to mention, sparring is just very hard on the body.
Yes.
And if you're going to be able to do this for a protracted period of time as you get older, you just got to get past the idea that all we do is roll.
Well, and it was like this. I keep mentioning this last deployment. What little bit of jiu-jitsu we did before we got totally shut down, I ended up being the highest ranking person at a class at one of the camps one evening, and some of the guys didn't know me very well, and incidentally, we were gonna work some X guard stuff, and I had this plan to work this with some other guys. There's a brown belt that was going to teach. Well, he wasn't there, so I said, "Hey guys, I guess I can take class." Well, one of these arrogant younger kids that I guess he didn't know me that well, I started warming up, and he starts taking over the class because he didn't know who I was and that I at least had some experience. And he kind of bounced back and forth with me for a little while, and then we weren't even hardly warmed up, and he goes like, "All right, guys, let's roll." It's like, I'll be honest with you, that evening, I'm like, you know what? I don't have time for this. I had to get on a plane or chopper the next morning. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to skip out of here. So,
Yeah, I get that. It's hard because, it's jiu-jitsu services, a really wide, range of people with a really wide range of desires and needs. And so it's tough sometimes to balance all of that stuff for everybody. Because you want to satisfy the younger guys that, want a real tussle out of things.
Sure.
But you also need to be able to provide service to, an older person that just doesn't have the physical ability to continue to do that as long and as rigorously. So it's really, it's trying to balance all of those things for groups of people is tough. Very, very tough. It's one of the real challenges of being an instructor.
Well, hey, Mike, we've spent some time here. We're getting close to an hour and a half, which is awesome material that we've covered. So we're going to start heading out of here, but wanted to talk about a couple of fun things real quick before we shut her down. Now, this is something new to me, and we've talked about this with some recent guests, so just wanted to at least touch base with you on it. Have you been running some red dots on pistols? How are they working for you? If so, what's your opinion on them?
I have. I've kind of put, stuck both feet in and dove all the way into the deep end with red dots on pistols now. One of the things I found as I started competitively shooting again was that my eyes just aren't as good as they used to be. I was a very, very visual shooter, and I could target focus out to about 25 yards and still shoot and still utilize the sights effectively. What I've found is that now with iron sights, I can really only target focus out to about 10 yards. And that isn't a skill question; it's a vision question. I just can't see the sights while focusing on the target. Past about 10 yards. Well, you put the red dot on there, and I'm back to normal. I'm able to completely target focus and simply utilize the dot, to interrupt my vision. I had to figure that out because I think, like most people who probably use a red dot for the first time on a pistol, they try to use it like iron sights, where they stare at the dot. And the reality is that that's not what you're looking to do. You're looking to let the dot just sort of intersect your vision and know that you've got a single plane that you can do, and you can focus entirely on the target.
Man, that's great because it's funny. I was just talking about getting a red dot pistol over the last several months, and it just so happens that when I get one, all of a sudden I start hearing a lot of these big name guys talking about how much it changed their lives getting into it. And I know red dots have been around for a while, even, kind of at the level they are now, but it seems like they've been exploding even recently.
Agreed. I think that they, the combination of just the market supply, the various different, models and making them, as reliable as they are now. I think that they've started to get to the point where, you and I have trained together plenty.
Mm-hmm.
You know that I'm generally a believer in keeping an item as simple as possible, unless there is a dramatic advantage to a piece of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that a red dot really does make a substantial difference, particularly as you get older.
Yeah.
Although I think that the advantage is really strong for a younger person as well. I think that there's just no getting around the idea that when there's a lethal threat, you're going to look at that lethal threat. And a red dot allows you to still accurately, present without concern that you have to take your eyes off that particular threat. I think that's the real, all the other stuff about age and target, things like that. That's really all. Those are just bonuses. The real thing that a red dot does, in my opinion, is that it allows you to look at a lethal threat when you can't do anything but, and yet still have a visual reference on where your pistol's.
Awesome. Great info. And we texted a little bit back and forth, and you were you didn't talk about it a lot. So it's neat to hear how much you really are into them compared to those texts we had.
Yeah, well, I think it's just a matter of I've come to it in the same way that others have. I got one, then I was okay. Well, I'm not really as fast with this, and then I started practicing it with it more, and I realized, oh, okay, wait, I can't stare at the dot. I've got to just let the dot intersect in my vision. Okay, well, now it's moving faster. Wait, now I can see exactly what I'm doing with my trigger press and dry practice.
Yeah.
So, I'm just, once I started to realize all the information that I was getting from it, I really started to realize what I was missing out on. Now, but I'm also, when it comes to the dot, I've tried a couple of different formats in terms of how to do it. And I'm really, really sold on the idea that you either have to get your slide milled, or you have to get a slide that has it's cut for a particular model. A Brownell slide or a Zeb slide or something like that. Because I really don't care for the plate-based systems. I think those really, I have a couple of guns, a couple of MOS Glocks, and I really think that a slide that's milled for it is just so much more reliable and robust.
Interesting.
It doesn't require the same attention that a plate does. On the MOS guns, the guns that I have plates on, I have a great plate. The aftermarket plates that are available now are better than they've ever been, but they're still not the same as as attaching it directly to the slide.
Yeah. Well, interesting enough, my wife loved my dot so much she bought a Glock 48 last week, and we're going to send her slide off next week to have it milled. So,
outstanding.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. I mean, we got it for her. I promise.
Uh-huh.
So, all right. Yeah. Great stuff, Mike.
I've been using that excuse for years too. So we're good good on that.
Yeah.
We understand.
I'm really serious. It is hers, but hey, I don't mind having another Glock in the safe. Just put it that way.
Nice. Well, I think too with the machining, especially depending on the firearm, and if you have it done custom, you're going to get an opportunity to get that dot lower to the bore axis as well than with using a factory plate. And that's one of the main. To me, that's a huge advantage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I use the aftermarket Brownell slides. That's where I kind of got into.
Well, it's already done. Yeah.
Yeah, is that the dot? When it's attached to the slide itself, as opposed to a plate being attached to the slide and then an optic being attached to the plate. It's a world of difference. It's just so much more secure on there.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I'm going to close us out here with one final question, if you're willing to indulge us.
Sure. Of course.
What is your favorite combo for a primary daily, EDC carry rig? What pistol, what belt, what holster?
Right. When I'm away from work, what I carry is a Glock 19. Mine is a 4th gen. I have an aftermarket slide on it and a Holosun 507 XC2. And my holster is a JM Custom Kydex or a Built Sparks Summer Special 2. Those are the two holsters I tend to rotate based on what I'm wearing at a given time or how long I'm going to have to leave the holster on, that sort of thing. And then for a belt, I actually don't prefer nearly as stiff a belt as I think most people do. So I use the Uncle Mike's Velcro belt. For me, it's the optimal combination of adjustability and just enough stiffness that it's going to be comfortable wearing it around. The other one that I wear on a regular basis is the Blue Alpha Gear EDC belt. I really grown to like that one too. That's also my underbelt for a duty belt. And I like their belts a lot. The simplicity of the system is a big plus in my opinion. I know that there are a number of belts out there now that are technologically advanced and allow you a significant amount of adjustability and stiffness. But I'll be honest, I don't prefer my EDC belt to be incredibly stiff. I think that becomes uncomfortable over a long period of time. And I think that, it's absolutely useless if you're not going to wear it.
Yeah.
No, agreed. And that's definitely, I want that thing as stiff as possible when I'm shooting competition. And, although I may have to crouch or, kneel or something, it's not like sitting at a desk, climbing in and out of vehicles. That stuff does require a lot more comfort than a competition rig. So no, I'd agree with you on that.
Competition rig, I use something entirely different. I mean, I use a rig geared for competition. Depending on what the sport is, because I try to shoot as many of the shooting sports as I can, and usually it's just a matter of what day it is. Lately, my my obsession has been Steel Challenge, so I use a specific rig for that. For the carry optics division, and then the 22 divisions, you don't use a holster, so you don't have to worry about it from there. And honestly, that's the area that I've found to be the most fun lately is those rimfire divisions.
Well, and you can kind of afford to shoot them too.
Yeah.
Well, now we're learning quite a bit about what Mike's been doing in his competition area on shooting. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's been fun, and my younger daughter Ellie has really enjoyed Steel Challenge a lot. In fact, she's sitting over my shoulder. She badly wants to say hello to everybody here. So.
Hi, Ellie.
Hello.
Hey there, Ellie. Glad you get to say hi.
Thank you.
You're saying hi to a bunch of people right now, just so you know.
Yeah, so she's been shooting Steel Challenge with me since I started, basically. It's a great format for people just starting because it's simple to understand. You get to practice it over and over. You're doing the same sort of thing, and honestly, I think for what I want to get out of it, it's about as good a format as there is.
Yep.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, we have used enough of your time, sir, and we are very grateful that you've come to share it with us because you impart wisdom every time we speak with you, man.
Well, I'm glad to do it. I'm glad you guys feel like you're getting something out of it. I enjoy coming and speaking with you guys as often as I can, and I hope that people get something out of it. One of my, the things that I really enjoy, about my, about my job now and also my hobbies, is that hopefully I find that somebody, gets something out of, my experience before this, that, maybe I shorten someone's path to trying to accomplish what they want to accomplish.
Yeah, well, if this will go further, obviously, but I mean, I know that all three of us have gotten a lot out of what you just shared about jiu-jitsu tonight, because that's sitting down and talking to someone that's walked the path is, to me, one of the most important things you can do is listen in that format. And like you say, maybe I'm going to grab something out of there that shortens my steps, and I won't make those mistakes as frequently or as often from having listened.
Yeah, it's one of the nice things about essentially spending a lot of time where I didn't always have a guide right there was that you get a much better insight as to what what really becomes important, and that's allowed me to really to feel as though I've got a pretty good grasp on the process, if that makes sense. And as I say that, I really got to credit some other people for that. Most particularly the guy that I owe a tremendous amount to for my process in jiu-jitsu is Cecil Birch.
Nice.
He's the guy who, and I still say that if you need someone to coach you between white and purple belt, I don't know that there's anybody better to get you to that point. At this point in Cecil's development, he might actually be the best guy to coach you from purple to black too. I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time since we've trained regularly together. But he's the person that I think is probably my greatest influence in how I look at jiu-jitsu now and the process that I take in it. And so I will always be grateful to him for kind of setting me on this, but most importantly, for taking enough of an interest in me that I was able to to pick up a lot of what Cecil thought about process and thought about teaching, and for years he entertained me asking him questions and telling him that, I found this and this, and he'd say, oh yeah, that's great, this and that, and he'd make me believe that I had really figured something out, and the reality is that plenty of people had figured out what I had done before me. But one of the things that a really effective teacher does, besides actually teaching you how to perform a task or teaching you a skill or a piece of knowledge, is they drive you on a path, to really, make yourself excellent. And that's really the thing that I owe Cecil for, is that I wouldn't have followed this path if it weren't for him. Giving me the motivation to be to be as good as I can at this activity, and helping me move along that path, and always having a next step for me. He's the guy that I really look at as the guy who taught me how to do this well.
Well, Mike, I'll say this real quick, and we will certainly let you go. It had been a while since I had seen Cecil, and he was the AI for the Range Master Pistol Instructor course I just took recently, and man, it was a great time hanging out with him. Just really enjoy his company, and as you're tracking, we're hosting him in Tulsa, and we're really looking forward to that.
Absolutely. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to make that one, because unfortunately it falls right at the time that my daughter has her national championship. But I'm thinking I may be able to squeeze the class in and then take off right after that. Man,
we would love that. I haven't seen you in many years, Mike, but I understand absolutely if you got to go to Fargo, we understand that.
Yeah, so I'm just going to have to kind of wait and see, wait and see what the schedule looks like there, and hopefully I'm going to be able to make both of those work.
Cool. Awesome. Well, everybody, this has been some amazing information, a masterclass here for sure, and a lot of things. So thank you so much, Mike, for spending time with us.
Man, I'm glad to do it, man. Like I said, I always love our conversation.
Right on. Well, till next time, guys.
Take care, Mike.
Bye.
All right, sure will. You guys as well.
Well, it sure was fun having our good friend Mike Brown on. If you've listened to our show much, you will have heard his name often. And we think that his wisdom and his articulation of the processes of improvement in really any endeavor, they were on full display there. So I think it's clear why we and our guests often bring him up. Now, we covered so much info with Mike, we are actually going to cut accountability this week, but we'll be sure to get that all caught up on the next episode. But before we let you go, we wanted to make sure we let you know who the guest is for our next episode. It's Cecil Birch of Immediate Action Combatives, and of course he's part of the ShivWorks Collective. You've heard about them quite a bit on our show too. Just wanted to let you know he's coming on, and we've got a pretty cool announcement to make. So make sure you listen to that next episode. Now, until then, hit the mats, hit the range, and hit the books. Thanks. Have a good one.